Good morning, everyone. Wanted to talk to you about Conor Howard, who's a Scottish man who's just been arrested in Greece. And wanted to also remind people that with transits in Qatar and the UAE, as frequent as they are these days between the UK and Australia, that we need to be extra diligent about what we're carrying in our luggage. So this Scottish man, Conor Howard, it was reported in Edinburgh News yesterday, was arrested in Qatar over a £10 piece of drugs paraphernalia in his luggage nearly a year ago. It was some sort of marijuana grinder. So he was detained at the airport in Doha for about 6 hours, and then he was released and thought nothing more of it until just a few days ago. He was travelling to Greece to meet up with his parents and have a little holiday, and he's wound up in prison, apparently arrested on the same charge that they released him for in the first place, and that is related to this cannabis grinder. So anyway, he's been detained in Greece and is pending extradition hearings. Now, he's been told by lawful counsel that he has a 99.9% chance of being extradited to Qatar. Now, I would say that he's unlikely to be extradited to Qatar. We've actually spoken with the family yesterday and hopefully appeased them a little bit. But we've had several people arrested in Greece before, but on Interpol red notices by the UAE and by Qatar, and in all cases we've been able to secure their freedom and they've been able to return back to the UK. So what we're hoping is the same outcome in this particular case, and we're hoping that he'll be granted bail today. There's a bail application pending. We've already contacted his MP in Scotland and asked for diplomatic intervention on this, but what we're hoping is that he's released with the freedom to return to the UK immediately, to come back to Scotland, where equally Qatar could request his extradition from this country. However, if he's not granted that freedom, he could be stuck in Greece for anywhere between 4 to 12 months if this matter goes to a full extradition trial. Now, in the first 4 months, it would be decided whether this case is going to go to a full extradition trial, which would take possibly 12 months or longer. But during that time, he would be stuck there. And we've recently had another client who was stuck in Greece, actually, Athens, for 3 to 4 months. And then they took it to that first hearing, and that's when the case was dismissed and he was free to go. So we're hoping that we're going to see the same in this case. But regardless of whether he is released immediately within the next few days and allowed to return back to the UK, it's still extremely damaging that Qatar was able to issue this Interpol red notice in the first place, that it was published on their website, that Conor has now been associated publicly to drug use. And this is from a country who released him when he was initially arrested in Qatar for carrying basically some small grinder that could technically be used for anything. So on the basis of that grinder, he's had his reputation damaged. He's been arrested in Qatar, released, and now he's been arrested again in Greece. He's been imprisoned. And if they let him go, who's compensating him for that? If they determine that that Interpol red notice was abusive, and I'm sure that they will, who is going to compensate him for that? Because currently Interpol is not being held accountable, Qatar is not being held accountable, and Qatar is a known abuser of Interpol, one of the top 5 countries, and their abuse has really increased over the past couple of years as well. We've seen people arrested in Spain, in Sweden, in Italy, and in Greece. So, and also Czech. And these are on the basis of abusive notices that never should have been reported to Interpol in the first place. But they're leading to lengthy detentions of British and other nationals in foreign jurisdictions. They still, even though they're going to be found innocent or they're going to be acquitted or the extradition is going to be denied, even though that is eventually going to happen, the fact is that they're being detained in notoriously terrible prisons in the worst conditions, some of them in Ukraine, in Czech, places that you just don't want to go to prison. They're being detained in these countries and then released, and it's being even ruled by those courts that this was an abusive process. But who's compensating them? Not Interpol, not Qatar. So this is really important that I think in this case, look, Greece is trying to increase their commercial relations with Qatar, actually, and Qatar is investing a lot of money. So that's going to sort of sway the way that they deal with extradition proceedings. And we've seen that with India and the UAE. We've seen that as they increase their commercial relationship, the extradition proceedings are suddenly faster than usual. So, and corners are cut, and extraditions have become more of a political tool than an actual legal process. And that's where we can see huge human rights abuses happen. Even in Spain, it's really concerning that they've made it more of a diplomatic, political decision to extradite people rather than an actual legal process. Now, in the UK, we have those safeguards, and that's why the UK doesn't extradite to countries like Qatar, Saudi, the UAE, because they know that they're not going to be able to get a fair hearing there. They know that if Qatar says we're only going to imprison him, as they have in this case, he would only be subject to 1 year imprisonment. But once they get him, it's never 1 year, it's 3 years, it's 4 years, it's as long as they like, as we've seen with other British nationals in the UAE. They agreed to extraditions to the UAE on the basis that that person would be detained only for 2 or 3 years, and they're still there 8 years later. So this kind of abusive process is unacceptable. Qatar should not even be considered by Greece or any European country as a destination to extradite our nationals to. But the fact is, we're taking their Interpol notices seriously because they're a member of Interpol, and so are we. So if Interpol is taking them seriously and publishing their notices, then we're taking that seriously as well. But not because we think Qatar is credible, because we think Interpol is credible and because we have that relationship with them. So it's very important that the British government intervene in this one and perhaps go a little step further. Ask the question at Parliament, why are we taking these Interpol notices seriously when they're coming from countries that we don't take seriously ourselves? If our courts won't extradite to these countries, why are we accepting Interpol notices from them? Why are we arresting our citizens on the basis of an Interpol red notice from them? And we have had a Qatar notice issued. Someone was arrested on the side of the road in England over a Qatar notice. But that's knowing that we're not going to extradite them. That's knowing that the crime that Qatar alleged had been committed was not even a crime in the UK. As this is not a crime in the UK, it's not a crime in Greece, and carrying a grinder, is it even a crime in Qatar? This is what we're facing. And if he went to Qatar, would he have fair representation? No. Would there be prejudice against him? Yes. Would the conviction be automatic? Yes. Would he be potentially subject to human rights violations? Yes. So all of these questions are going to determine the outcome of an extradition hearing, and hopefully that would result in his return to the UK and not to Qatar. But this also reminds me of the strange things that British nationals and other foreigners, of course, get arrested for while they're in transit, and particularly en route to Australia. It could be they've lived in one of these countries before and they might have a debt. They can be pulled off the plane even if they're in transit and they're not stopping over. So they can be pulled off the plane while in transit. That's happened several times, and then they can be detained for quite lengthy periods of time. So that's something to be careful of. We've also had people arrested for having, ridiculously, for having poppy seeds on the bottom of one's shoe, and that was from a bread roll that was eaten at the Heathrow airport. Then we've had people pulled off the plane for having pharmaceutical prescription drugs like painkillers or, anything pharmaceutical. Perry Coppins, I can see that you're logged in here. You were detained again for prescription medicine that you needed on your voyage. So we've had lots of people arrested for the most ridiculous of things transiting through these airports. But this is going a step further. This is Qatar using the Interpol database to try and get people arrested outside of their borders in foreign countries. Now, Conor's lucky that he got arrested in Greece, frankly, because if he travelled somewhere else like Thailand or any Asian country, South American country, anywhere that we're not really familiar with, possibly an African country, would have reacted differently, and they might automatically expedite his return to Qatar, and then he would face prison time for something that, a crime that he hasn't committed, a crime alleged by the Qatari authorities that they let him go for in October last year. So the fact that he's been arrested in Greece, okay, that's a blessing. It's not the worst case scenario, but it still has to be taken seriously, because without pressure, Greece would naturally be inclined to try to satisfy their commerce partner, Qatar. They're going to want to build those diplomatic relations, and they're going to want to extradite people from Qatar back to Greece as well at some point. And these kind of reciprocal arrangements can get in the way of human rights, and they don't mind sacrificing a few for that diplomatic relationship. And that's so important that's spotlighted. And in this case, we'll be hearing back today on the bail, so I can't wait to hear about that. Hopefully he'll be home soon. But I suppose the message is beware where you transit through, beware what you're carrying when you do. The most ridiculous things can have you arrested and detained for lengthy periods. And if you've had any kind of trouble with a Middle Eastern country in the past, like Conor has, it's worthwhile doing an Interpol check. You wouldn't think, sometimes it's not even a crime that you're reported to Interpol for, you're just misreported there, so you wouldn't even think that you'd be on there, but they've recategorised it under an Interpol-worthy crime and reported it there. Now, particularly because Qatar has increased their donations to Interpol, they're more likely to publish their frivolous notices. But thanks very much for joining, guys. I'll keep you updated. Billy Barclay, I don't know whether you remember him, but he was arrested in the UAE for a £20 counterfeit currency note. So he actually saw this in the paper, and he went and spoke to the family of Conor and put them in touch with me. So I'm really thankful for Billy. He's just been really appalled by the treatment in the Middle East that Scots have received, and has particularly been watching. There've been a number of Scots we've been reporting on recently. We've been reporting on Morag Kusa just got home, a couple of others too. Escape me now. But yeah, a couple of other Scots have just got home as well, so that's really good to see. And hopefully Conor will be home soon too. But thanks very much for your support, guys. I'll go through all of the comments after this, and and PM you. Cheers. Bye.